everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's been a little while. I took a little break from YouTube and I thought the first video will be coming back, favorites video, because those were one of the top viewed videos and everyone loved seeing what my favorite colors of the month were. So I couldn't believe it. I had to look for my favorites little sketchbook. If you remember, I think this is now the third one. So I've been doing the favorites videos for a really long time, and the way it started was when I was watching the beauty favorites where YouTubers were sharing their favorite beauty products, skincare or like lipsticks or whatever. And so I got the idea from that, thinking I should share my kind of favorites on a monthly basis. So that's what I was doing and I want to go back to it. So this is the mixed medium paper from Dalla Rowney and it's the A5 250 GSM. These are really super affordable and I like how swatches look on them. I like the fact that they're spiral as well, so it's easier to get it completely flat. It has light texture. It's quite white, so it makes all the colors pop really well. So let's basically continue. Yeah, so the last one I've done apparently is October last year, so that is interesting. We are now coming to the end of September, so almost a year since I've done my favorites video. Alright, so what I'm going to share today is basically what I have been consistently using throughout the last few months. So for sure the summer and maybe a little bit more, maybe a month or two before that. But it's going to be a couple of liners and just watercolors this month because I haven't been using any other mediums with my watercolors. It's just been that and this. So let's start with liners. Okay, so before we start, I thought also I will share a food favorite only because it's just on my desk right now. These cookies are so good. They're like really thin, super thin, and they're round and big like this. They're individually wrapped and they are the naranja orange. I think they're Spanish and they are beautiful. I have been literally addicted to them. They have little bits of orange rind in there and they're sprinkled with sugar. And I love just kind of having one of those with a bit of a coffee. And yeah, it works really well. And I've been carrying them in my bag everywhere to like my son's activities while he's busy doing that. I'm just kind of editing on the computer and having a little snack, and these are gorgeous. Here in UK they are sold in various food shops, including Waitrose and Tesco's. I'm not sure, I haven't seen them in Tesco's, but definitely Waitrose and what else, Marks and Spencer's, I'm not sure either, but I have seen them somewhere else. Oh, I have seen them at our local butcher. So if you have like a bit more upmarket grocery places, they're likely to be there. A friend of mine introduced them to me, and since I have been really loving them. Okay, so enough about food. So liners, I have basically two of each. So what I'm doing is I'm using the 0.1 and 0.5 in conjunction, and at the moment I don't have any particular preference. I'm just trying to use them up to make my mind up. But so far I've got this lovely pan, which is the Staedtler, and the key for me is that all four are waterproof, because I then add watercolor after I have drawn out the lines. So then we have Derwent Line Maker, and that one, as you can see, has a bit more juice, so it's blacker. This one is running out, Staedtler, but it really is interesting because it kind of keeps going. So sometimes I'm coming to the point where I think it's almost feeling empty, then I give it a few days or even a week while I'm using this one, and then I try Staedtler again and it seems to be still going. So that's quite good. And then we have the 0.5, and that's the thicker one. So this one is the Unipin Fine Liner, And this one I use not to draw with, but to add kind of larger details or fill in spaces. And this is Pigma Micron, also 05, and they're fairly similar, so I'll title them in that order. Then in terms of watercolors, actually before we move on to watercolors, I will also briefly mention that I have started working in my Strathmore, and that's the mixed media journal. So I have done a couple of things here on my Patreon, and I am in the middle of sorting out all the tiers and filming all the content, so I can't tell you too much or show you too much. And but yeah, all I can say is that the Strathmore has been an amazing sketchbook, and I strongly believe that having worked in a number of different sketchbooks, I am, once finished with everything else, probably will be going back full-time to the Strathmore mixed media, because the experience I had in that sketchbook when I first tried the first sketchbook, that was amazing. And now going back to the second one, or starting with the second one, it's a great experience, and it just reminded me of it. So okay, so we've got all of that covered. In terms of brushes, there's another thing I have been trying, is kind of more using one brush rather than a number of brushes, but have a brush that will cover everything from fine detail to larger areas. So it's kind of a process of getting used to a different experience, and how you need to hold the brush, how you need to press the brush, because with these brushes it is easier to get out of lines if you haven't painted with it for a while. So this is the long round Princeton Velvet Touch round 8. Great brush. I would consider actually maybe a 6 or a 4, because in general I don't use an 8. It's kind of too big for the size that I'm working with in a sketchbook. Another great brush that I have discovered, or rediscovered rather, is the Eradicator by Billy Showell. This was part of the set that I bought when I took her botanical classes, but this brush basically has synthetic bristles with a lot of bounce, and they're designed to use as a little eraser if you wish, but you can find cheaper maybe versions, or maybe versions that are easier available. It needs to be flat and it needs to be rather small, so this is too big, and the bristles need to be synthetic. So this type of a size, which is 1/8, but this is a pure sable, so it's softer. We want something that's quite kind of hard and allowing us to wiggle the brush to erase. So this is the reason I started using this brush, is because of this brush. So I started going out of lines a lot and then needing to correct. Another thing that I have been really enjoying is more kind of practicality rather than art supply, is this little holographic glass or jar, what you want to call it. I got it at the Tiger shop and I regret not getting two, because it's such a fun addition to your desk. I love color, and this is a way of introducing color in a really simple way, because you're going to be, you know, using something to hold your pens. So I tend to just pop my most used fine liners in there, so it's easier to find. Okay, so I have here 3 palettes, and I'm going to show you the absolute colors that I have been using non-stop throughout my artwork. I'm also going to be sharing my updated favorite watercolors on Patreon, but I will also do a video to let you know when it's all live and running and when I have launched it. So in the order that they are specified, or laid out rather, in this palette, we have got green gold. So that's a color that I have been literally just using in all of my foliage and enjoying it tremendously. Next one is Moss Green by Michael Harding, which is an interesting color as it can pigment separate a little bit. Let me just do another swatch here right next. So I'm gonna take some water and then just dab paint into it. See what happens. Okay, then we have got rich green gold. So that's another one that has been consistently used. A lovely mustardy type of a color. So this one is Daniel Smith Paraline Scarlet. Gorgeous, fiery red, which is in the middle of warm, in the middle of a cool tone, which I really enjoy. And then we have Opera Pink. That has been also in pretty much every of my painting, one way or another. I would either use it on its own or mix it with yellows, mix it with reds, oranges, you name it. It's been really fantastic to use it. There has been one color that I have rediscovered, and that is the White Nights Quinacridone Rose. In fact, I cannot find another color like this across all of my watercolors. Okay, let me just title them and see what I can find to compare, or just to give you a demo why I love this color. Okay, so I had to dig into my archives and I have made a little discovery. Basically, the pigment of White Nights Quinacridone Rose is PR122. So we're going to be looking at colors that are, I think most of them are single pigmented. And I then also found that the only color that I have in that single PR122 is Aqua Quinacridone Magenta. But we can then play off that, and we have here Quinacridone Magenta just by name, Daniel Smith, but it's a different pigment that they use, PR202, so we'll compare that. I also found just a magenta. Of course, it'd be preferable if it was quinacridone, because it would be more vibrant, more transparent, as quinacridones tend to be. But this is a PV42, so altogether slightly different. So I'm expecting it to be less rich and maybe lighter in its color tone. However, when I started looking into other colors that I only have in this kind of format, I will show you a couple more things. So when it comes to schminke, we have got a couple of colors that could potentially fall under the same umbrella. We have purple magenta right here. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you which pigments are in here. And we also have quinacridone magenta. So this would be the color that we are really wanting to see. And I think it would be a high likelihood that this would be a PR122. Okay, so then when it comes to Winsor & Newton, again, no pigment info, but quinacridone magenta is right here. Again, all of these colors have been swatched out on different papers, and so it's hard to tell exactly how the colors would be unless I would have them to hand and swatch them side by side. But just to give you an example of these colors, then there is a permanent magenta, as you can see, way too dark, so we would be interested in this color as a comparison. Then another interesting discovery I have made from my Mugello Mission Gold watercolors is that they actually don't have a PR122 on its own. They tend to have loads of pigments mixed to create those super bright, vibrant colors, but a lot of their pinks have PR122 one way or another. So just as a quick overview, we have got Bright Opera, Compose Rose, we have Permanent Alizarin Crimson, Rubine, Bright Rose, Permanent Magenta, and so on, even going into purples. So I think looking at my swatch card, at least 3 or 4 of these colors have PR122 in there. Finally, let's look at Roman Schmal, and I actually have a color which is Quinacridone Fuchsia. I would really put fuchsia and magenta in the same group. I think it's just, you know, slightly different names, but essentially it's the color, and it's a PR202. So I think I have this one to swatch out. I'll pull out my Roman Schmal palette out and swatch them out together with the other 3 colors that I have here. My Roman Schmal Aquarius palette that I have custom made. It's just a Derwent pencil tin that I have spray painted and put a little label on, which works well. However, they're quite sticky, so oftentimes I find when I lift my lid that some of the pens stick to the pen, even though I have them on a magnet. This is the, what did we say, 358, and it's Quinacridone Fuchsia, the PR202. So it's not really the same pigment, but color-wise, in fact, I'm just going to swatch them all next to each other. Then let's go back to this one. I don't know if you can tell straight away. It's just so much brighter and glowier. So let's see how they behave all once they dry on this paper. This is not the best paper for watercolor, not my favorite. I wouldn't choose to create artwork in here, but for swatches it's usually quite accurate, most of the time anyway. Okay, let's look at now Schminke, Daniel Smith, and Core. So pigment-wise, Core is the only one that is PR122. So I'm going to start with that first. Wow. That's even more vibrant. It could be that it's just came fresh from a tube, which is slightly obviously different to a pen. And then we have Daniel Smith, so let's do that. So it's a little bit duller. And I remember I have never been a fan of this Quinacridone Magenta ever since getting this color. And then we have the one that I'm not even expecting to be within the same range, but let's see. Actually, it's close enough. All right, so I've done here a couple of other things. So they're dry now. As you just have a kind of swift look, you can see that there is nothing exactly the same as the White Nights Quinacridone Rose. Probably the closest that I could compare it to is Core Quinacridone Magenta. And here I have really loaded it quite sort of generously. So it's quite dark around this area, but around the edges where it's a little bit more water, it's actually fairly similar to Quinacridone Rose. Don't know whether I could go as far as saying it's identical within those areas compared to here, but there is a similarity. Roman Schmal's Quinacridone Fuchsia next to it looks a little bit duller. Then we have Quinacridone Magenta by Daniel Smith, which is basically the darkest out of them all. And then the final 3 here are a little bit outside, I would say, of this spectrum here. We've got Magenta by Schminke, which is not deep enough to be this kind of tone. And then we have Mijello Red Violet. I decided to go through a couple of colors here which look like they might be part of this color family, but as you can see, the red violet goes quite far into the purple. But interestingly enough, it's a lovely mix if you consider mixing PR122 with ultramarine, and that's the purple and the blue that you get in this color. It's a really beautiful color. Then we have Schminke Brilliant Purple. Again, this is kind of in between that and this. So Opera Pink, I would imagine if I mix Opera Pink into this color, I would go somewhere similar to this color. And what it is PR122 actually, with fluorescent pigment in there. Now opera pink, let me just look up what opera pink is. Yep, so it is PR122. So what's interesting is that it seems that you can add some sort of fluorescent pigment to PR122 and get to opera pink or brilliant purple, that type of a color. I also realized I should pull out my Daniel Smith dot card and have a brief overview and see if there's anything at all similar. So we've got quinacridone magenta, which is this one, as you can see, very dark. We've got quinacridone rose, by name it fits. Again, I don't have pigment information unfortunately here, but I can see it's a beautiful color. I wonder if I have it or not, but it's kind of more of a raspberry, warm bubblegum pink mixed in with this quinacridone rose. What else? Nothing else fits the brief. Here we go. I hope it was quite useful to have a look at all these comparisons. And essentially these are the colors that I have been using non-stop in my artwork. There have been, of course, more colors that I would add and mix with, but essentially these are the 6 colors that have been in my limited color palette. So thank you so much for watching, and I will next time update you about my Patreon, which I can't wait because I have been filming loads of exciting content, including finishing sketchbook pages, creating more illustrations, podcasts, talking about life things and art things, challenges, etc. So I hope all of it is quite inspiring, and I'm really hoping to launch it in September and then start filming also content for October month as well. But pretty much everything is filmed, just need to edit and, you know, all of the behind the scenes stuff that needs to be done. Otherwise it's gonna happen very, very soon. So stay tuned, and I will be updating you about my Patreon very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.